Hi, good evening. I'm Councillor Clive English, the Chairman of the Planning Committee, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this remote meeting of the committee. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded for playback on the Council's YouTube channel, and this will include the instant messaging. Will anyone else be recording the proceedings? I'm not asking to stop anyone doing this, but just so people will know if this is occurring. If no one indicates so, I will assume that is not taking place. I will now explain how we're going to do the meeting this evening. My role as chairman will continue, but a Democratic Services Officer and a legal representative will assist me in implementing the remote meeting protocol. The Democratic Services Officer will also produce the minutes and provide procedural advice as may be required. Instead of public speaking, members of the public have been invited to submit written statements to be read out by me as chairman, or videos or audio recordings to be played in the appropriate speaker slot. We have statements to be read out and audio recordings to be played this evening. I will provide further explanation as we proceed throughout the agenda, but members are reminded at this point that instant messaging will be visible to those viewing the meeting and should only be used for raising technical issues, indicating a wish to speak, raising a point of order, or seconding a motion. I will now ask the Democratic Services Officer to take the attendance register by reading out the list of committee members in alphabetical order. Members should confirm their attendance by answering present, assuming they're here, of course. Mrs. Snook.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. I'll now take the register. Councillor Atkinson.
Present.
Councillor Brindle.
Present.
Councillor English.
Present.
We have apologies from Councillor Eaves. Councillor Harwood.
Present.
Councillor Kimantz.
Present.
Councillor Mumford.
Present.
Councillor Parfitt-Reid.
Present.
Councillor Perry.
Present.
Councillor Powell.
Present.
Councillor Spooner.
Present.
Councillor Vizard.
Present.
Councillor Wilby.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Snook. I will now ask the Democratic Services Officer to read out the list of officers present and which items they are presenting this evening.
Thank you, Chairman. We do have rather a long list this evening.
Fair enough.
We have James Bailey, Development Manager for items 12 and 20. Nick Gallivan, Landscape Officer for items 15 and 16. Marion Geary, Principal Planning Officer for item 19. Rob Jarman, Head of Planning and Development. Austin Mackey, Major Projects Manager. Jocelyn Miller, Senior Planning Officer for item 17. Cheryl Parks, Legal Representative. Adam Reynolds, Senior Planning Officer for item 18. Paul Robertshaw, Principal Conservation Officer. Tony Ryan, Development Team Leader for item 14. Richard Timms, Principal Planning Officer for item 13. And me, Debbie Snook, Democratic Services Officer. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. We've partly covered apologies. Are there any other apologies other than Councillor Eaves? I'll take that as a no. Item 2, substitute members. Are there any substitute members for Councillor Eaves, presumably?
Do we have Councillor Bryce on the call, subbing?
Thank you very much indeed. Nice to see you, Councillor Bryce.
Is she actually here? Is she present?
She should be on her way. She's emailed me to say that she's going to join.
Well,
okay.
Let us hope that Louise is able to join us at some point in the near future. We'll carry on at this point. Hang on.
Oh, she's just appeared in the IM.
We'll carry on at this point to item 3, visiting members, and I will ask the Democratic Services Officer to read out the names of visiting members along with the agenda items they have indicated they wish to speak on.
Thank you, Chairman. We have Councillor Pearl for item 13 and Councillor Garton for item 14. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 4, I don't believe there are any items to be withdrawn from the agenda this evening. Just check that, Mr. Bailey. Not hearing anything, so I will assume that there are no withdrawn items. Item 5, date of the adjourned meeting has been set for the 21st of December, but I would hope that, we must get through the business this evening, as it would be extremely difficult to hold a meeting on that date because another meeting has been scheduled for that day, which would involve a lot of members. Moving forward to item 6, urgent items. I intend to take any verbal updates as urgent items, as they will contain further information relating to the applications to be considered this evening. Unless I hear any indications to the contrary, I will assume that we have agreed that. I'm not seeing anything, so that is agreed. Moving on to item 7, are there any disclosures by members and officers? You should only indicate if you have a disclosure.
Item 19, I'm the chairman of Bournemouth Chelsea Parish Council, don't take part in anything to do with planning, and therefore I will vote and speak on that item.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Are there any others? Take that as a no. Move on to item 8, disclosures of lobbying. The Democratic Services Officer will ask members of the committee and any substitutes in alphabetical order if they have any disclosures of lobbying. They should either answer none or yes, and if it is yes, specify the agenda item or items they have been lobbied on.
Thank you, Chairman. I will go through the list of members in alphabetical order. Councillor Atkinson.
Yes, items 13 and 14.
Thank you. Councillor Bryce, have you been lobbied? Councillor Bryce? Okay, I'll come back to Councillor Bryce. Councillor Brindle.
Items 13 and 14.
Councillor English.
The same 2 items.
Thank you. Councillor Harwood.
No lobbying has reached me. I have been lobbied on my Maidstone address, but I can't use it, so no.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Comance.
Yeah, 13, 14 and 19.
Thank you. Councillor Mumford.
13, 14 and 19.
Councillor Parfitt-Reid.
She said no on the IM.
No, I'm here. That I was talking to Louise. Items 13, 14, 17 and 19.
Thank you. Councillor Perry.
Items 13 and 14.
Thank you. Councillor Powell.
Items 13 and 14.
Thank you. Councillor Spooner.
Items 13 and 14.
Thank you. Bit of a theme here. Councillor Vizard.
13, 14 and 19.
Thank you. Councillor Wilby.
13, 14 and 19.
Thank you. Councillor Bryce. Are you with us at the moment?
She's indicated she's been lobbied.
Oh, lobbied. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, Debbie, can you hear me now?
I can. Yes.
Oh,
thank
perfect.
You.
Thank you.
So 13.
Item 13. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, we move on to item 9 to consider whether any items should be taken in private because of the possible disclosure of exempt information. There isn't any I can see at the moment, so I move that the items on the agenda be taken in public as proposed. And unless I see any indications to the contrary, I will assume that that is what we are doing. Right, that is indeed agreed. Item 10. Minutes of the meeting of the 26th of November, which have been circulated already. Will members indicate if they do not agree that these minutes are a correct record? No indications, therefore they are agreed, and I will sign those later. I'm going to have a lot of signing to do when this business is over. Item 11, presentation of petitions. There are no petitions this evening as far as I'm aware. Items 12 to 20, committee reports. I will read out the agenda item and then refer to the officer who will be presenting the report. After the report has been introduced, I will read out the names of the people who have submitted written statements to be read out or recordings to be played at the appropriate slot. The statements will be read out by me as chairman or a ward member. If appropriate, I will then ask any visiting members of the item to make their contribution. I will then advise members of the list I've received by instant messenger of those wishing to speak and ask if there are any other members who wish to speak. And at appropriate points after members have spoken, I will invite the officer to respond to those comments or questions. After the list of members wishing to speak has been exhausted, we probably all will be, I'll ask if any members wish to come back with any more questions or comments. If a member wishes to propose a new motion or amend this current one, I will ask for a seconder with members going through instant messaging or indicating verbally. And the first one to signal will be the seconder. The seconder will be asked if they wish to speak at that point or to reserve their right. At the end of the debate, any amendments having been voted on, I will sum up and the original motion or substantive motion will be put to the vote. The legal representative will go through the list of members in alphabetical order and ask them for their vote, which will be for, against or abstain. By voting, the member is confirming that they have been present for the whole debate on that item on which they take an informed decision. If there is no response, it will be assumed that the member is not present. I will have a second or casting vote regardless of whether I have used my initial vote. The Democratic Services Officer will be asked to confirm the result of the vote, and I will at that point announce the decision. Unless requested by 3 members of the committee by IM or verbally in the debate, the names of those voting for or against a motion or amendment or abstaining from voting will not be recorded in the minutes. If a report is for information only, I will ask if it is agreed that the report be noted, and if there is no dissent, a named vote will not be taken. At the end of each item, I will, if appropriate, ask for a brief pause while those who wish to do so log off from the meeting. So we move on to agenda item 12, deferred items, and I ask Mr. Bailey to provide an update on any of the deferred applications, if there is one. Mr. Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no further updates. Obviously, the last item on page 3 of your papers was only heard at the last committee. The other 2 items still have outstanding matters to resolve before we bring them back. They will be brought back as soon as we are ready to bring them back. Thank you, Chairman.
Well, in that case, I proceed to the planning applications for this evening and commence with item 14. And I call upon Mr. Ryan, Development Team Leader, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. Just share my screen. These are 2 related applications for this site. Firstly, an application for planning permission and a linked application for listed building consent. I will go through the planning application first and then follow this up with the listed building consent. The planning application is for the demolition and rebuilding of the rear section of the existing building on the site, including a slight reduction in the building footprint. With the work to the rear of the building, other building alterations and roof extensions, the proposal seeks to provide 2 residential dwellings. The existing building is in business use as a large photography studio. The business use of the building is restricted due to the proximity of nearby residential uses. In terms of the aerial photograph, the application site is approximately one kilometre to the north of Hollingbourne Village on Hollingbourne Hill. The main application the main part of the site is set back from Hollingbourne Hill by approximately 85 metres, with an internal service road providing vehicle access. In terms of the aerial photograph, the access comes in from the sort of bottom of the image. Whilst in the countryside, the application site is not considered to be isolated. As shown on this slide, the application site is located in a larger group of buildings that include buildings of Hollingbourne Farm at the top of the image. Also, the residential building called Garden Cottage, which wraps around the rear of the site on the left-hand side of this image. At the front of the site is Hollingbourne House, which is Grade 2 listed. The application site is in the setting of this listed building. In addition to the main house, the footprint of Hollingbourne House also includes 2 cottages, so Wells Cottage and Mulberry Cottage at the back. The 2 cottages are in the applicant's ownership, with the main part of Hollingbourne House in separate ownership. The building on the application site is not listed or a non-designated heritage asset. To the rear of the building on the application site is a walled garden area, and that's used in connection with the Mulberry and Wells cottages. Whilst now separated from the listed building by the building on the application site, the walls round the garden area are listed as a result of their age, built before 1948, and the location in the curtilage of the Grade 2 listed Hollingbourne House. On the left-hand side of this image, at the rear of the site, are 2 sunken glass houses. The left-hand glass house, dating from the late 1800s, is curtilage listed due to its age, and the other from the 1950s is not listed. Also nearby is the site of the Grade 2 listed Donkey Wheel, and also there's a Grade 2 listed building at the site entrance. This is the next slide. This is the front and side elevation of the existing building. This photograph taken from near to the site entrance. You can see the long building frontage. Note the existing blocked up openings in this view. The front building is in red facing brick and was constructed in the 1980s. The front part of the building has a double height internal space that provides the main large studio space for the current business use. In terms of the elevation drawings, the top drawing is the current situation with the 3 blocked up openings highlighted in yellow. The bottom drawing is the proposed frontage with the 3 openings fitted with glazed doors. The retained solid central doors provide access to a covered central area that also provides access to the right-hand side unit and the rear garden. The new glazed doors in these existing openings are considered a positive change to the building, reducing the existing dead building frontage. Note also the landscaping that will improve the setting to the building and the outlook for future occupiers. Just going to the rear of the building. The rear part of the building was constructed in the 1950s as a former cattle shed. The existing black timber cladding dates from around 1992. The rear part of the building is domestic in scale. This is both internally, consisting of smaller rooms and ancillary space to the main front studio space, and also externally, as seen here with the smaller windows. In terms of the rear elevation drawings, top drawing shows the present building with the garden wall omitted, with the materials, existing building materials. Bottom drawing is the current situation. Note the reduction in the length of the building on the left hand side. The opening in the middle of the building provides access through to the frontage of the site. In terms of works to the carefully listed wall, the central and right-hand opening there are new, and the wall has been reduced basically from the height of the wall on the right-hand side, basically to the approximate location of the second tree. And moving on to the side of the building, note the different character of the front and the front and the back parts of the building, and also the sort of closed openings again. In terms of the elevations, existing proposed drawings of the side of the building. The existing drawing at top has the existing openings highlighted. The existing proposed openings on this elevation are approximately the same in actual area, but these openings, as shown here, have been changed around. In terms of materials, the materials are the same as existing. The rebuilt rear part of the building will be reclad in timber, and also note the roof extension set below the front and rear roof ridge heights. This is a roof plan showing, you can see that the front part of the building, the existing ridge line, the rear part of the building, and also with the roof extensions highlighted, and the setback from the sides of the building shown there by over 5 metres on the left and 4 metres on the right. In terms of the block plan, in terms of this plan, the access is from the left-hand side, with Hollingbourne House to the bottom of the image. Access to the first unit is to the side of the building. Access to the second unit is by way of the central courtyard, and also into the side of the new building. To the rear of the building, you can see the carefully listed walls, and at the back of the site, the glass houses. The older listed glass house on the left will be restored, with the newer glass house on the right demolished, and the actual position of that glass house marked. In terms of the neighbour objection, part of the neighbour objection is in relation to the window on the side elevation of the building. Officers do not consider privacy from that window to be affected due to the separation distance from the boundary, and also the presence of an existing outbuilding. That said, if necessary, the applicant has said that they'd be willing to actually accept a condition requiring that window to be obscured glazed if necessary. It's going on to the listed building consent. Just in terms of a overview in terms of the actual plan application. The loss of the existing building use is acceptable for a number of reasons. These are set out in the officer report at page 52 of the papers and page 56. These reasons include the viability of the use, which is restricted due to the proximity of existing neighbouring residential uses. The council has also previously accepted the loss of the business use, granting planning permission for an ancillary residential use with a swimming pool in the application building and a tennis court in the rear garden. The proposal, when viewed as a whole, is not a conversion. It's highlighted that contrary to page 41 of the papers, the last bullet point, and also page 84, the last bullet point, local plan policy DM31 is not considered relevant to this application. A more intense business use would not be appropriate in this location due to the adjacent residential units, uses, and in accordance with SP 21, these uses would generally be directed towards other parts of the borough. With reference to local plan guidance on policy DM5, paragraph 6.37, the rear garden of this site is not brownfield land, and the application building itself is not considered to be of high environmental value. With the existing negative impact on the listed building setting, and in the limited views available, the building has a negative impact on the AONB. With the following improvements, the proposal is considered in line with the requirements of policy DM5. The proposal involves the reinstatement of the original building openings that will reduce the current blank ground floor appearance and restore the building symmetry. Improvements to the courtyard with the introduction of new landscaping in this area. Heritage benefits arising from repairs to the garden walls that will ensure their long-term survival. The accessibility improvements to the garden space for future occupiers, and the restoration works to the sunken glass house. And all of those will help secure a viable use of the site and the sort of long-term survival of those elements. The removal of this overly restricted commercial use will also remove a non-conforming use in this location, with a positive impact for nearby occupiers. In terms of NPPF paragraphs 193 and 194, great weight is to be given to conserving these heritage assets, but that advice says that harm should be justified. As set out in the papers, the harm that will result from the proposal to Hollingbourne House, the courtesy listed walls, the glass house, will be less than substantial, and the same level of harm will be to the listed donkey wheel and the building at the listed building at the site entrance. The harm that will be caused will be outweighed by the public benefits that have been outlined. In line with the NPPF, special regard has been had to the desirability of preserving heritage assets, and the changes to the application of building will have a positive effect on the setting of the Grade 2 listed Hollingbourne House. In that respect, the proposal is considered in accordance with the local plan, and the recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to planning conditions. So, going on to the listed building consent application. This application is firstly for the demolition of the existing wall, and rebuilding that wall on its existing line at a reduced height with 2 additional openings. Secondly, it will be the actual repair and restoration works to the other garden walls. And thirdly, to the restoration of one of the sunken glass houses and the removal of the other derelict glass house. This image shows the existing wall located to the rear of the studio building, currently propped up due to its current state. Also note the distance of the wall from the back of the main building, which is partly the reason why it's being lowered. The bottom image is the proposed drawing of the rear of the building, with the red line showing the height of the existing wall. And as I said before, the 2 openings are the middle opening there and the right hand side opening. In terms of the damage, the restoration works to the other garden walls These are just two images of the sort of weather damage to the other boundary walls. The applicant has submitted a method statement in terms of how these repairs are to be carried out, and that is provided in the listed building consent report on page 96. This slide is the works to the glass house. The restoration of the right-hand side glass house with the removal of the left-hand side structure. In terms of summary, as set out in the report to members, special regard has been had to the preservation of the culturally listed walls and the glass house, and this application seeks to actually conserve these heritage assets. The harm that will result from the proposal to the culturally listed walls and the glass house will be less than substantial, but this harm will be outweighed by the public benefits. These benefits include heritage benefits arising from the repairs of the garden walls that will ensure their long-term survival. With the substantial historical alterations to the culturally listed walls, the proposal will retain their significance that comes from their alignment, the materials and the bond. There are accessibility improvements to the garden space for the future occupiers and the restoration works to the sunken glass house. These changes will secure the optimum viable use of the site, providing 2 family dwellings with access to the rear garden space, which is consistent with the restoration of the walls and the glass house. The proposal is considered in line with the policies of the Mason Borough Local Plan and other relevant guidance, and the recommendation is to grant listed building consent subject to planning conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Right, we have 3 speakers on this. The first one should be a recording from Mr. and Mrs. Kinnersley. Do we have that recording, please?
I do, Chairman. Just bear with me.
Thank you.
Here you go.
Hello, I'm Donna Kinnersley and I live at Hollingbourne House with my family. The application site of the studio is accessed through our garden and is within the curtilage of our house, which is Grade 2 listed. We are objecting to the scheme because we believe that it does not accord with the local plan. The proposal fails to meet the 2 key policies of DM5 and DM31, which permit residential use in the countryside. The case officer has accepted that the application fails to meet the criteria of policy DM31, and therefore it has to be determined against policy DM5. But it is vital to remember that policy DM5 is a criteria-based policy that only allows exceptionally the residential development of brownfield sites in the countryside, providing that the site is not of high environmental value. The density reflects the character and appearance of individual localities. The redevelopment will result in a significant environmental improvement and that the site is reasonably accessible. It is our view that the development fails all 4 of these tests. So taking each point in turn, firstly, we are genuinely shocked to read that the officer thinks that the site is not of high environmental value. It sits in the middle of an AONB and within the curtilage of a Grade 2 listed house. If that's not environmentally valuable, then what is? There's also suggestion in the report that the application site currently makes a negative contribution to the setting, and I have to say that we completely disagree. The barn is an attractive and inviting setting. The buildings are in keeping with the traditional outbuildings you would expect in a rural estate like this. The buildings are not in a state of disrepair, and they are being actively used by the owners. Secondly, we think the proposed scheme is too intensive and the density does not reflect the character and appearance of this locality. The proposal is unsympathetic. It's overwhelming, it's overly complicated, and it's out of character with the surrounding area. We think that an alternative scheme for one unit should come forward, working within the existing building envelope rather than squeezing two large houses in. We have real concerns about the design of the scheme and the excessive glazing. The side is particularly dominating and out of keeping with the character and aesthetic of the original buildings. The roof would go from a traditional pitch to an infilled flat roof. The design will overlook our garden. The masses of glazing at the front is the first thing you will see as you turn into the drive, and it will become the most dominant building here, dwarfing the existing listed properties. Thirdly, this is located in a remote area with no local amenities and is therefore not sustainable. There are no facilities nearby to buy essential supplies, no footpaths to the village on a 60-mile-an-hour road, no public transport. The hill is so steep, there is an annual competition to cycle up it. The use of a car is essential to access everyday necessities. Finally, we just cannot accept that the development will result in a significant environmental improvement. We all agree that the development will cause harm to a heritage asset with significant alterations to the curtilage listed wall. The case officer refers to the less than substantial harm, but there is still harm, and this must be acknowledged, because less than substantial harm, inverted commas, should only be approved if there is significant public benefit. Here there is no public benefit. Separately, it's not enough to say that the listed wall will be repaired when the applicants have neglected to maintain it for 20 years. It is their most basic duty to maintain a listed wall. I think it's worth pointing out that a very similar application at Lower Bell Riding School was refused by the committee on the 1st of October because it did not meet the 4 threshold tests of DM5, and the same applies in this instance. The sad thing about all of this is that it doesn't have to be like this. Instead of an overly domestic and intensive scheme, the barn could easily be converted into one 4-bed house, which would celebrate the barn's existing character, as well as halve the existing footprint. It would result in a more sensitive scheme and would avoid any damage to the significance of the heritage asset. It would avoid the need for new openings and significant alterations to the curtilage listed wall. It would avoid the need for the subdivision of the garden. It would avoid the need for a flat roof design, and it would avoid the need for excessive glazing. Good practice says that applicants have a duty to determine whether it is possible to accommodate change without causing harm to the significance of the heritage asset in the first instance. This has not been done, and no efforts have been made to explore this. We therefore request that the application is refused and a more sensitive alternative be explored. Many thanks for your time and consideration. Thank you.
Right, we should now have a video from the applicant.
Yes.
In the name of Mr. Dixon, please.
Yeah, bear with me, Chairman. I'm just going to share my screen for you. Could I ask Tony to stop sharing, please?
Yep.
Just bear with me, Chairman. I need Tony to stop sharing. Excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
Can you just confirm you can see that, Chairman? Yep.
I can see that. Thank you.
Here you go then. Thank you.
Good evening. First of all, I'd like to thank all the Mason Borough Council officers and the committee for their time in considering both these planning and listed building applications, both of which I'd like to briefly address here. These have been in the planning system now for 4 years, and as such have been handled by several teams of planning and heritage officers. in which time they have adapted positively to address any comments raised. All of the officers involved with them have, after due consideration, seen merit in supporting these proposals. Angela and I have lived at the courtyard for 22 years. We have a long established record of substantially restoring and improving the listed cottages, their gardens and the barns in question. And we would like to consider that through these proposals we are able to continue with this process. At this point in time, as sole owners of all the properties in the courtyard, we are uniquely placed to address parking, boundaries, landscaping and amenities to best effect for the future harmony of the wider site. The key benefits of these proposals are, firstly, 2 new energy efficient homes that are of a design, layout and scale that fits the nature of the plot and its residential courtyard garden site, along with the wider economic benefits the project works will bring to the local economy. Secondly, reuse of the property in a way that is sympathetic and beneficial to the historic setting, in particular by enabling the much needed renovation of the rear garden, which is currently lacking in function, use or purpose. Thirdly, reuse of the property in a way that retains and addresses the residential amenity of the existing and future courtyard neighbours. And lastly, a secure use for the barn site and rear garden, which will bring stability and certainty for the wider courtyard site and future residents for many years to come. I would therefore kindly ask you to support these proposals and the officers' recommendations that they be passed. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We now come to Councillor Garton, and as the visiting member, Councillor Garton, are you with us?
Indeed I am, Mr. Chairman. Good evening.
Are you addressing just the application or both? Did they stand the listed building consent? It would be easier if you address both as
I do. I will be very, very short, as I usually am in front of your committee, Mr. Chairman, and I will address both issues.
Thank you.
I did call in this application because I've got great concerns about the history of this application. You can see on page 43 of your bundle that this application was previously subject to judicial review, and I have obviously great concerns, and this application needs to be heard by the committee rather than as a delegated officer's decision, to make sure that the issues of the judicial review are properly addressed and being properly considered by members. So that's the main reason why I called this in. The heritage site isn't an environmentally sensitive area. It is in the AONB. I haven't seen anything in this bundle about compliance with the AONB management plan. Maybe the officer can elaborate on that later on if members wish to ask him questions. You've heard eloquent speeches by the proposers as well as the objectors, so I will not dwell on that. The objector made a very long and elaborate point about policy DM5. I'm sure members will consider that tonight. I met both the objectors and the proposers, and I can assure you this is not about a neighbourhood spat. Those parties both assured me that they're getting along quite splendidly as neighbours. It is really about their view and their feeling towards a heritage asset. So over to you, Mr. Chairman and committee members, and I hope you give this very considerate thoughts tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Garton. Indeed, we obviously shall give this serious consideration. I have so far Councillor Harwood, and I think Councillor Bryce has indicated on this as well, although it wasn't entirely clear whether that was this or previously. Councillor Harwood. Councillor Harwood.
Yeah, thank you. The system was playing up a little bit. Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me in. I think that there's a theme I'll be developing right through the night, in that I haven't been able to look at the plans on account of the fact that every time I've gone on to the planning website to try and interrogate plans, I just get a grey picture and it doesn't even buffer. I've just been unable, and I've tried on several different computers, and so there seems to be an issue, or certainly I've got an issue with the plans. However, I remember this because it's quite an old application that came in, and my, I think, key concern really reflects that of the neighbour, I think, in the DM5 and the other local plan policies. They require a truly exceptional development in this sort of setting. And I am far from convinced that the 2 units that are proposed achieve that. For example, you would expect a kind of flat building with a slightly kind of utilitarian approach to at least be sustainable in terms of materials and in terms of energy generation and so on. And I cannot see any of that. I mean, if it was staying as a business use, we could at least require kind of BREEAM standard, but I cannot see any sustainability in there. And I think at the very least on the new build unit that you should have solar PV or combined heat and power or something. I find it remarkable that we're looking at the high bar that we've not seen something outstanding in terms of the materials proposed and its sustainability. The other concern I have from this site, which again reflects neighbours' concern, is that the somewhat kind of utilitarian use of this site, the kind of blacktop tarmac and the areas that are concreted over and so on. I would have thought that if we had a proposal coming along like this, it was an opportunity to tear up a lot of that hard standing and re-landscape it as a kind of a Victorian garden, if you like, get much softer, much greener, get far more trees and shrubs in appropriate to the building and the setting. But there appears to be none of that. And I think the fact that it's, as mentioned, in the heart of the AONB, and as the Ward Council stated, there's an AONB management plan which gives chapter and verse on landscape treatments and the way that these proposals should go. And Hollingbourne has got a particularly fascinating landscape setting. If you look at our landscape character assessment and guidance, Hollingbourne, it's really got the original kind of Kent Downs tree and shrub cover in that area. So we should be reflecting that and celebrating that. That currently isn't there. So I don't think it's insurmountable, but I would like the case officer to come back on whether we can look at elevational treatments which reflect the local area better. We can make it more sustainable, get solar PV or whatever on the new build element, and that we can up the amount of soft landscaping with appropriate trees and shrubs to this setting. Thank you.
Yes, I'd like to, before we go any further in the debate, get officers' views on how much we can address by these issues, if appropriate, by condition at this point, on how much we'd have to actually refer this for further consideration. Mr. Bailey and Mr. Ryan, would you like to come in on those points before we go any further?
I think Mr. Ryan can start that off, Chairman. Thank you.
Yes, I think in terms of the landscaping, yes, the applicant has sought to a certain extent to actually improve the frontage of the building in terms of putting in landscaping along the long building frontage. I think what they've also sought to do is to provide the necessary car parking within that area. I think yes, there is scope. I think to further reduce the amount of hard standing, and to increase the amount of sort of soft landscaping within that area. My view would be that it would be possible to do that, but by way of a planning condition.
And what about the other issues?
In terms of sustainability and solar panels, I think again we can deal with that by way of planning condition.
Right, so that's 2 out of 3. That just leaves whether the elevational treatment is acceptable. Any comments on that?
I wasn't entirely sure.
No, I'm not entirely sure either. Councillor Harwood, could you come back on that? I'm sorry to keep bringing you in, but to explain exactly what you meant by that, because I'm not clear.
Yeah, I mean, what it was the listed building, the listed wall, and the grade 2 listed building has certain conceits. It has certain ways in the brickwork and in the brick colour, which is not being reflected in the new build, which is, as I say, a little bit functional to my view. It was just whether we could reflect some of the almost, it's not exactly vernacular, but some of the conceits used within that design in terms of colour and so on would work really well, or at least bring in some exposed timber or something, just something to make it look like it's in the Kent Downs OMB next to a listed building, rather than being somewhat utilitarian and a shed with an extension on it. Do you understand what I mean?
I understand what you mean, Councillor Harwood. I'm just not quite sure of the exact condition that we would apply to achieve that. Can you assist me?
To help you on that, it would be on the materials palette and on the colouring. I think that's the critical issue.
Right.
Those dark red bricks and so on, which are in place, which are actually, a number of the listed buildings that are in Hollingbourne actually utilise them, and it is unusual. It is much darker red than you tend to find elsewhere, and I just wanted to ensure that we are getting this as right as we can because of the sensitivity of the setting.
Chairman, could I suggest something on that point?
Of course you can.
I can see exactly where Councillor Harwood's coming from. In a situation like this, I would normally recommend like a sample panel to be constructed on site prior to construction, which you can put in a condition, which shows, the bricks, the pointing, the mortar detail, and that means that you get the confidence that it's right before any works are starting, including the colour of the bricks, etc., the bonding type, and that means you get more certainty moving forward, and that has to stay on site for the duration of the construction, so you can actually physically see what you're approving as it's being built. That's what I would normally suggest where there is a concern that you're expressing.
Okay, thank you. We think we've explored that. I'll come back to that if need be, Councillor Harwood, and I'll take a few other speakers. Councillor Bryce.
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, I'm subbing tonight, so do accept my apologies if I've missed anything. I think there's a number of concerns I have with this. The current design is there because they're farm buildings. So, as Councillor Harwood says, a utilitarian. I can't say it.
Utilitarian.
Thank you. Because that's what they're supposed to do. So, if we're going to say, well, we can have housing there, I think the design has to be much more exceptional, as Councillor Harwood noted, and I don't understand why we're having to set this by condition. I don't think the design does justice to it. This is an incredibly historic area of Hollingbourne. It's an iconic part of the village as you drive up this hill. And the setting, I don't think, in terms of DM5, I don't think the setting is being, the setting concerns are being addressed. And I don't think it actually meets policy DM5 in terms of being, that exceptional design to mitigate development to housing there. There's no regard to the AONB management plan. And Councillor Harwood's notes, a shed with an extension, kind of stuck in my head. In terms of the mitigating impact, it seemed to be, and apologies if I've kind of, not picked this up correctly, but the mitigating, benefit seemed to be that the garden walls would be repaired. Well, why hasn't the owner already repaired them? You don't need to build houses to repair. I don't know, unless I'm missing something here. So I would have said, why haven't the walls been repaired and looked after? It's not conditional to the housing being built that's looked after. So I'm struggling a bit with what the mitigation is on this, and to the point where I'd actually move to refuse it.
Is that seconded?
Yeah, I will second that, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Powell, would you like to speak now?
Yeah, sure. I mean, to be quite honest, Mr. Chairman, and please forgive my ignorance on some points of this kind of application, but I've just been making. First of all, I'd listened to Mr. Ryan, and very convincing kind of argument. Then I listened to the objector, and I thought to myself, I'm listening to two different applications here. So, which was the reason why I've scribbled down so many notes. And one of the things, I suppose, living in a Grade 2 listed property myself, it probably takes on a slightly different kind of meaning, that the most important thing is to maintain what we've got, to enhance what we've got, to replace what's damaged, and to keep it as it was. I mean, that's the whole idea of, kind of listing. But then the notes that I've written down was, as Councillor Bryce just said, which was there was no AONB kind of management plan, or if there was, I certainly didn't hear it within the submissions, which is why I apologise to yourself at the outset. But what I couldn't work out was the access through the objector's garden. I mean, that seemed quite strange. I couldn't quite work that part out, but maybe I missed something there as well. I also put down that the historical setting, it's got to be maintained. That is just so important. I've written down the repair of the walls, 20 years. I looked at the 16 conditions at the end of this, and I thought, well, we've already mentioned another 3 conditions tonight. And I always think the more conditions you put on something is there a slight nervousness about agreeing to permit a decision in the first place. And there's another word come out, which was harm, that there was no harm being done. Well, I think that's very subjective. I think there's considerable harm done the way it was set out at the moment. But that doesn't mean to say, as Councillor Harwood said, that something cannot be done in the future. But I would just like a completely different design come back, which is sensitive to both the neighbours that are obviously, or by the sounds of it, good friends anyway, and what is also sensitive to the points that I've actually made out. And that is the reason why I shall be supporting Councillor Bryce this evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Mumford, please.
Yeah, I was going to come in after Councillor Harwood. I went to look at this and expected to go whoa, and I've also come across what everyone else can't pronounce, and I can't, the utility area of the form of this conversion. It lacks renewables. It's not an enabling development. I like to see enabling developments that will bring back into use another building, but this is not even being used for that. And I go back to a policy principle that one of the objectors brought up, that we do have a planning balance to consider in our own mind, and that is, we all agree it's less than some, and NPPF says we must therefore compare that to the public interest. And I'm not sure I can see a public interest, and I think it fails that. And I, like Tony and the other speakers, would like to see something that followed the form of the area, the location that it's in. I would like to see better landscaping, and we are in a climate change emergency. I would like to see renewables, and I have identified that we have got charging points there, but no, I'm not happy with it either. And I think those people that have gone for the objection, I think somewhere within the objection we should point out that the less than substantial harm and the public interest balance, which I can't get at the moment.
Councillor Atkinson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've made similar notes to what Councillor Powell was talking about just now. I don't know if anyone's noticed, I don't know if I'm reading too much into this, but on page 46, the plan, every single bedroom says guest bedroom, not just bedroom, guest bedroom. So I do wonder if maybe this is actually being designed as a holiday let rather than actual residential buildings. And I mean, in our pack, we also had a plan of the first floor, and the first floor said guest bedrooms, not just bedrooms. So I don't know if I'm reading too much into that or not, but I'm a bit concerned about that. And going back to my usual thing about conditions, if we are minded to approve this, obviously we want B bricks and no signals, no plastic guards. But I am a bit concerned about that, and I do think we should have some sort of explanation about the description of guest bedrooms. Thank you.
It's not an unusual estate agent piece of language. I mean, when I had a 3-bedroomed house in Tovel, one of them was supposedly a guest bedroom. So it's not an unusual description. So
these are all shown as guest bedrooms.
Yeah, well, the question, I'm going to bring Mr. Bailey back in now. I mean, most of the things that have been raised so far are things that could either be achieved through a deferral for negotiation or through condition. I really haven't heard a substantive ground for refusal that couldn't be addressed yet. Mr. Bailey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tony, could you just share your screen again? Because what I just want to articulate to members is identifying sort of where this, this sort of inconsistent design with the AONB, because a lot of mention has gone on in terms of the AONB management plan, which I accept is very important. But what I'd just like to draw members' attention to is what's there and what is being proposed. So you've got the front elevations, which you can see, which the changes become glazing to the front. If you could then show the flank elevations, Tony, please. So that's what you've got as existing, and then what's going in to be proposed. So where I see the big difference is being that linking arch on the roof. Tony, if you could just highlight that particular area, that is where the key change. Materials are not dissimilar, excepting that there is more glazing added to the existing building, and there is a sort of vernacular that's retained with this building, excepting the fact that when you convert to residential, you put more glazing into a building. So I just want to sort of emphasise to members, where is this more appropriate building and where is the sort of inappropriate element that's coming forward with this scheme. We have to accept quite clearly in terms of less than substantial harm that's arising. And yes, it's very important. Paragraph 193, the MPPF is very clear that great weight should be considered to the asset's conservation. So obviously any harm weighs against the proposal, even if that is less than substantial. You must give that great weight. And obviously then balance that in the balancing exercise. But I would also draw your attention to what paragraph 192 of the MPPF says. It's about the desirability of sustaining and enhancing the significance of the heritage asset and putting them to a viable use consistent with their conservation. We frequently convert agricultural buildings into residential in order to preserve them. You've got to look at the optimum viable use for that building. And obviously your officer has already set out the difficulties with this scheme, given its location surrounded by residential properties. So I don't want to go on to appreciate where the discussion's going, but I, like the chairman, haven't really heard where this harm is arising, excepting where we've said that there's less than significant harm. And what would members want to see? I do agree. You could put, if members wanted to see more sustainable elements, you could put them on certain elements of the building in terms of solar PV, if that's what members wished. the officer said you could condition the issue of more softer landscaping. You could easily appropriately deal with that by condition. There are obviously benefits arising. You must take that into account in terms of works to the sunken glass houses. They are coming, which are curtilage grade listed, so that's a benefit coming forward in the scheme, which is currently derelict. Obviously there are issues with the wall that the officer has pointed out, but as long as members balance the benefits that are arising, the harm obviously that is arising, which must attract considerable weight in the decision-making process, and as long as members weigh those all up. But for members' view, I see this coming forward as sort of overall benefits to the building, accepting the concerns that members have raised. But I would add that, you know, the issues of putting a sample panel or having that constructed on site is something that I would recommend to strengthen the detailing condition with the materials on site. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Harwood, as you've actually indicated you want to move something, I will take you slightly out of order.
Yeah, thank you. Reflecting Mr. Bailey's observations, I would therefore like to move that we do grant permission. However, I think we do need the materials palette to be sure that we are reflecting the vernacular in the building, and we do need to achieve better sustainability. So therefore, solar PV or some other renewable element should be built into the scheme. And in terms of the landscaping condition, I think there's two issues on that. One, we need to evidence that we are reducing the area of hard standing, because I think that is an intrusive element of this business use within the curtilage of the listed building. So one, we need to show a net diminution of the amount of hard standing, and two, we need more soft landscaping and planting into the scheme, which, you know, it will give structure to the site. And in order to get that right, I would like that to come back to the ward councillor and the group spokespersons if possible. So with those suggested changes, I will, because this is balanced, and with those extra guarantees on quality, I think we can overcome the concerns. What I do not want is for us to potentially lose this on appeal and then not get those design and landscape design enhancements. And the involvement of the ward councillor in looking at that with the group spokespersons is just a belt and braces to make sure that officers and the applicant get it right. Thank you.
Councillor Mumford has seconded that. Do you want to speak again, Councillor Mumford, as you have the right?
Just very quick. I think the planning balance that we had to make about harm, etc. I think Mr. Bailey convinced me it was there. Yeah, I'm reasonably happy now, and with those conditional changes, yeah, I'll second it.
Thank you. Now I'm going to just take the people who haven't spoken yet at this point. So that's Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Chairman. I think a lot of it's been said, so I'll just be brief. It is a delicate balance, this, and I understand that. But I am concerned about DM5, which I still think this proposal's not really, it contradicts it. And I'd like officers' consideration on this, because it talks about the site is, DM5 says the site is not of high environmental value. Well, I think this is. You've got to take the whole site, including Hollingbourne House, and I think this whole site is of very high environmental value, and I can't see how DM5 agrees with that at all. Statement. So I am worried about that. But it is a delicate balance, and the issue is whether you can do all this by condition, or whether you really need a bit of a relook at the whole thing. And I'm still thinking about that. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Spooner, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we need to look at the sheer sort of practicalities of this scheme. Obviously, the officers have negotiated a pretty good scheme over, I think, 4 years, the applicant mentioned, and there is overall benefit to the general public. The scheme may not quite be as green or as aesthetically pleasing as we might want it to be. And I would be very reluctant to see this application refused, because I think it's almost there but not quite. And I'm completely behind in what Tony Harwood is saying. Let them go away, and perhaps we'll either defer for them to green up the application, to put better landscaping, to use different materials to increase the sustainable elements, or else we approve subject to appropriate conditions. And I'm very, very much in favour of what James Bailey recommended about the sample panel conditions, which I can remember using years ago. And that is a very good way of ensuring that development is exactly how we want it to be. So I think that's all I want to say for the time being. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Right, we are moving towards closure on this debate, but I will take Councillor Powers. He's actually said he has a question.
Yes, certainly. It was just one of my notes that I wrote down earlier on, which was access through the objector's garden. Could Mr. Ryan come back to me on that, please, Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Mr. Ryan?
Yes. The current application site is historically part of the wider much larger site of Hollingbourne House. So basically, the application site has been kind of carved out of the larger, much larger site. So the access to this site is a shared. It's owned by the neighbour, but the applicant has a right of access along the access road. So hence the neighbour saying that the access is through their garden. I think I would add to that, in terms of the current use, of course, the business use would currently mean traffic associated with that business use using that access as well.
So it's not a change of substance in that respect.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, sorry, Mr. Ryan. So that is. It's perfectly legal, is it, for all these rights of access? There is an agreement in place which has been verified upon the work that you've been doing on this application. It just seems strange to me. I just think if somebody had wanted to put in a planning permission close to where I am and wanted to use part of my land as rights of access, so it's purely a question born out of naivety or perhaps lack of understanding, but just feels just a little bit strange. I just want to make sure that if we are going to give approval to this application, and I'm still not sure which way I'm going to go yet, that we get everything, that even the law, exactly right. Maybe a legal officer could come back to me on that.
Well, actually, you can have a planning application without any access at all. The two issues are different. But Ms. Park, if you want to comment.
You've taken the words from my mouth, Chairman. Yes, you could permit a site, a bit like you would perhaps permit a site where you would need a footpath diversion or something along those lines, and that would be a separate matter to be undertaken. You could quite reasonably permit the application this evening and the listed building consent with no access to it at all, and then the access would need to be sorted out privately between the landowners.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Right, I'm going to wrap this up now, unless anyone has anything new to add. Right, okay, right. A motion. I would strongly advise, in my personal opinion, that there is a serious risk of not achieving any improvements by condition if we refuse this because I don't actually think the argument against it is in planning terms very strong. So it's a question of whether members think that we should try and improve this application now or take the risk of not having any conditions as proposed, in my opinion, and maybe not even the conditions as proposed on the original papers. So I will be supporting Councillor Harwood's amendment. I'm going to proceed to the vote unless anyone else has anything really important to say at this point. In that case, is everyone clear what the amendment is? Councillor Harwood?
Yeah.
Would you like to run that through?
I will. The first one is that we need to ensure that the materials utilised in the elevations reflect the wall and the listed building appropriately. So that's why I'm requesting a materials panel, which can be discussed by the officers with the applicant to ensure everything is right, and not just in terms of the brick and brick colour, but the other materials, because there's some composite and glass and other things going in there, which we need to ensure is right. So that was one thing. The second thing is that the landscaping condition should negotiate a reduction in the coverage of hard standing within the application site to allow greater level of soft landscaping, and the detail of that soft landscaping should be in compliance with our landscape character assessment guidance for the Hollingbourne area, which is pretty much backed up by the AONB management plan. So I think that's clear, but I think we need quite a detailed landscape conditions, get that right. And then the third thing is essentially, this is an extension to an existing building, so we have strong supplementary planning document backup on demanding an element of sustainable energy generation. Further, we're seeking the exceptional building, and I think sustainability is an element of exceptional building in relation to DM5. So we want either solar PV or if an alternative renewable would be seen as by the architects as more appropriate, we bring that in. I'm not fussed with what it is, so it's just that as long as we have it.
Okay, thank you very much. And this will be consulted, the ward members will be consulted on this. And
the ward member and the planning spokespersons, I think, will cover everybody.
Okay, thank you. Right, Mrs. Snook, could you call the vote, please?
Chairman, can I just double check? Is it just the renewable energy that's to be in consultation with the...
No, it's all three conditions.
All three, thank you.
Yep.
And the legal officer will be calling out the names, Chairman.
Yes. Ms. Park.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just confirm as well that this is the amended motion includes delegation to the planning officers to finalise the wording of those amended conditions? Just so we've got that for the record. Yes. Thank you, Chairman. And in terms of the voting, Chairman, would you like me to take the planning application first and then proceed directly to the listed building consent vote?
Yes, we will need to take two votes, as technically they're two separate issues. So yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to check whether you wanted to allow any more debate on the listed building items first.
No.
Okay, thank you. We'll move straight to the planning first of all, then committee. Councillor Atkinson.
For.
Councillor Bryce.
Against.
Councillor Brindle.
For.
Councillor English.
For.
Councillor Harwood.
For.
Councillor Kimmins.
For.
Councillor Mumford.
For.
Councillor Parfitt-Reid.
For.
Councillor Perry.
Against.
Councillor Powell.
Against.
Councillor Spooner.
For.
Councillor Vizard.
For.
And Councillor Wilby.
For.
Thank you very much, Chairman.
And could Mrs. Snook tell me the score, please? Or the total votes, please?
Thank you, Chairman. That's 10 in favour and 3 against.
No abstentions.
No abstentions.
Right, that becomes the substantive motion as we've amended it. Although, if you take the vote again.
Thank you, Chairman. I will do. Councillor Atkinson?
4.
Councillor Brindle?
4.
Apologies, I should have gone to Councillor Bryce first. I've not learnt my alphabet.
It's okay. I'm substituting anyway. Against.
Councillor English?
4.
Councillor Harwood?
4.
Councillor Kimmants?
4.
Councillor Mumford?
4.
Councillor Parfitt-Reid?
4.
Councillor Perry?
Against.
Councillor Powell?
Against.
Councillor Spooner?
4.
Councillor Vizard?
4.
And Councillor Wilby.
4.
Thank you very much.
And can we have the outcome, please, Mrs. Snook, in terms of votes?
Thank you, Chairman. That was 10 in favour, 3 against and no abstentions.
Therefore, the amended recommendation is agreed. We now proceed to the vote on the listed building consent, which is as on the papers. It will be once I've moved it. I'll move the recommendation on the papers. Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Do you wish to say anything, Councillor Wilby?
No.
No. Okay, so I will ask the legal officer to take the vote on the listed building consent.
Thank you, Chairman.
Motion as on the papers.
Councillor Atkinson?
4.
Councillor Bryce?
Come back to that.
Come back to Councillor Bryce. Councillor Brindle?
4.
Councillor English?
4.
Councillor Harwood?
4.
Councillor Kimmants?
4.
Councillor Mumford?
4.
Councillor Parfitt-Reid?
4.
Councillor Perry?
Against.
Councillor Powell?
Against.
Councillor Spooner?
4.
Councillor Vizard?
4.
Councillor Wilby?
4.
And Councillor Bryce, are you there?
Against.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Well, thank you very much indeed, members. We will now have a 15-minute break and return.
Chairman, can I just confirm the voting on that?
Oh,
was
sorry,
10 in
my
favour
apologies.
and 3 against, sorry.
If you could be kindly, Mrs. Snooker. My enthusiasm running away with me there.
It was 10 in favour, 3 against and no abstentions.
Thank you very much. My apologies. That means that the listed building consent is granted. We'll now have a break and reconvening at 25 to 8. Gentlemen, we return to the agenda, and the next item is agenda item 13, the Summerfield Hospital, London Road, and I call upon Mr. Timms to introduce the report.
Sorry, Chairman, can we just do a quick register there, please?
Yep. Okay, we'll do that.
Okay, thank you. Hello again, members. Just do a quick register. Councillor Atkinson.
Yeah, back again.
Present, yes?
Present. Yeah, present.
Councillor Brindle.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor English.
Present.
Councillor Harwood.
Present.
Councillor Kimantz.
Present.
Councillor Mumford.
Present.
Councillor Parfitt-Reed.
Present.
Councillor Perry.
Present.
Councillor Powell.
Present.
Councillor Spooner.
Present.
Councillor Blizzard.
Present.
Councillor Wilby.
Present.
And Councillor Bryce.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
No one seems to be missing, so Mr. Timms.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me?
I can hear you and I can see your screen.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so this presentation will cover both the application for planning permission and listed building consent for the conversion works, the new build elements and the demolition works. So just to get your bearings, this is the main building in the middle. The front is the Grade 2 listed terrace, 79 at the north end that's to be demolished. 81 London Road to the north and 61 to the south, they're both Grade 2 listed. Summerfield Lane and Close wraps around the south and the west sides, and that serves a handful of houses there. And then there's large detached houses and gardens on Queen's Road to the north and other detached properties to the south. Members will be familiar with the site and the proposals from the committee report, so I'll just run through some of the main issues. In terms of the listed building, the terrace, changes to the front will be minimal and they are clear enhancements to this important front elevation, and that's primarily through the reinstatement of 3 of the attractive porches, and this photo just shows, just there you can probably make out one of the porches as is, and then obviously missing here, and that would be reinstated. To the rear, what this shows, hopefully in the top left corner, obviously existing photo with the modern hospital extensions, they'll all be removed, and then this image at the bottom shows that the rear of the listed building will be better revealed, and that's considered to provide a significant enhancement. The next slide shows a comparison of one of the rear wings, and you can see here the alteration is mainly to the roof to create the second floor. Hopefully this also shows this break at the first floor level, which is being introduced. At the moment it links in, and that again with the listed part of the front to provide space and reveal the listed building. And in terms of this design here, the southern wing, which will be larger, that would be of similar design. Now, there will be some low-level harm caused to the listed terrace through the changes to the internal layout to create the apartments and through the introduction of necessary modern services, and this must be given great weight in line with the NPPF. However, this impact is considered to be justified because the proposals will bring the building back into a viable residential use, help to maintain the building, as I said, enhancements to the front and the rear, and it would provide housing on a highly sustainable site with the associated social and economic benefits, and this is all considered to outweigh that level of harm. The listed wall at the front would be altered, and that would provide waiting space and a bus shelter, and this would also cause harm to that wall, which is listed, and the setting of the listed terrace at the front, but that's considered to be justified as it would improve pedestrian safety, and again the benefits are considered to outweigh the harm. Turning to the new build element, this slide here shows the new building on the right in context with the listed terrace, and it has been designed to respect the listed building and take cues from it. As you can see, the height and the width of this front part is in proportion with the height and width of the taller parts, the original parts of the listed building. Matching brickwork and stone banding are proposed, and good quality detailing is provided with the stone sills, the recessed stone to the top and bottom of the windows, and slight projecting elements just at the front here to add interest. This detail and quality materials are vital, and these are secured under conditions 19 and 20. In terms of the layout, this slide I've highlighted on here that the new green amenity spaces for residents that would be created, and in here that's through removal of the modern extensions. Here it's through removal of some hard surfacing. This is in addition to some existing spaces at the front, which are less usable, but there are other spaces there. And important trees are retained, and spaces for new landscaping are provided, including new trees, and also the existing hard surfaces, which a bit of a mismatch, would be replaced and improved. Along the south edge here, this is the single-storey building that will be converted to a single house, and the new cycle store and residence gym is here. Despite a number of objections, the development and distances to neighbouring properties have been carefully considered and are deemed sufficient to prevent any unacceptable impacts on privacy or outlook. In terms of affordable housing, the vacant building credit means a lower amount of affordable housing provision in line with national and local guidance, and this will be secured on site. No affordable housing providers have expressed an interest in taking on only the 2 units, and so these will be secured as discount market sales units, and that's because they don't require any management by registered providers. They will have a 20% discount in perpetuity and local connection criteria to ensure this is provided for residents of Maidstone Borough as a priority. Members will know there's many other material issues. They're fully considered in the committee report. And in conclusion, for the reasons outlined in detail in the reports, the applications are considered to comply with the relevant policies of the local plan, and permission is recommended. Just a quick update, just need to correct a typing error at the end of paragraph 611. It refers to policy SP17 rather than SP18. It's just a typo, and I can confirm the application was assessed against SP18 and it's listed the policies at the start of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Timms. We have a number of speakers. The first, the objectors, Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, and their statement will be read out by Councillor Pearl. Councillor Pearl, please. Are you with us, Councillor?
I am. Sorry, Chairman, just sort of getting started there. Although we accept that it was inevitable that this site would be developed for residential use, we are dismayed to see the extent of the proposed redevelopment. Sadly, this seems to be another example of a developer trying to max out a site with as many small units as possible, ignoring the character of the immediate area, which comprises predominantly family-sized properties. We are disappointed to see the number of one-bedroom and studio flats proposed, which are not in keeping with the surrounds and will change the dynamic of the neighbourhood. We have a number of specific objections. On privacy, we do not agree with the developer's assertion that the proposals would not have an unacceptable impact in terms of loss of privacy in respect of the neighbouring properties. We are alarmed to see that it is proposed to extend the rear south wing by a considerable distance and to add a further floor with a mansard roof to the entirety. This extension would enable residents of the top floor of this block to look into our garden, which is currently totally private. We also believe they would be able to see into our bedroom. This is completely unacceptable. There are vague comments in the report about leaving certain trees in place, but even if all the trees remain, this would not provide sufficient screening. On noise, quite apart from the noise and disruption generated during the redevelopment, our peace and quiet will be adversely affected once the build is completed. When the site was used as a hospital, most visits were during the day, resulting in minimal disturbance in the evenings and at weekends. Clearly, with this proposal, the opposite will be the case, with significantly more noise during these periods. The proposed gym is sited next to the boundary with surrounding properties. What guarantees will there be that loud music played there will not be allowed to disturb existing residents? On parking, the proposed number of parking spaces are totally inadequate for the number of units suggested. It seems that not all one-bed or studio flats will have an allocated parking space, and so far as the 4-bedroom houses are concerned, less than 2 parking spaces per unit are provided. The developer is naive in the extreme if it really believes this is sufficient. As it is clearly impossible to park immediately outside the development, it must surely be obvious that occupants will try to leave their cars in adjoining roads, causing inconvenience and annoyance to those residents. Much is made in the report about the development providing an attractive and enjoyable environment for the occupants. Why should this be to the detriment of the existing residents in the surrounding area? In conclusion, we request that due regard is given to the concerns of existing residents and voters, and would urge the council to refuse permission for this proposed gross overdevelopment in its current form.
Thank you, Councillor. The next statement is from Mr. Reedman for the applicant, which I shall read. Dear members, thank you for this opportunity to make comments this evening. As you will be aware, the application for the former Summerfield Hospital follows a detailed and proactive process of engagement with the council. We are very grateful to work with NBC before enjoying the course of the application and feel that this engagement has added significant value. The site has now been empty for some time. The hospital closed in April 2019, and Summerfield Terrace is an important listed building and deserves to be put to a use that will ensure its future conservation. Importantly, this scheme allows the mistakes of the recent past to be removed and put right. The scheme will, for example, remove the modern utilitarian accretions at the rear before revealing the original form of the building. It includes the reinstatement of original features, including, for example, the missing original front porches, and it allows for an appropriate reinstatement of much of the original plan form of the terraces. The scheme has been carefully developed to conserve the original fabric, including internal decorative features, original windows and ceilings. The replacement of number 79 has been designed with sensitivity, resulting in a high-quality building which takes cues from the historic terrace without creating pastiche. We pride ourselves on creating high-quality and characterful residential developments, and this will be a leading example. Summerfield is well connected to the town centre in a sustainable location with good public transport links. Great weight should be given to suitable windfall sites such as this for housing, which help deliver the council's housing needs in a sustainable way without relying on greenfield land. Policy DM12 requires development proposals to make efficient use of land for housing, and this proposal does that while introducing a sense of spaciousness around the buildings and preserving the setting of the listed building. We have included a mix of 1 to 4 bedroom apartments and houses to meet a range of housing needs from first-time homeowners to local families. The apartments and houses are generously proportioned and will benefit from good natural daylight and amenity. A good relationship is maintained with local buildings well in excess of best practice, habitable room to habitable room distance. As you will see, we have also included measures that will improve safety for road users, including provision of a new bus stop at the site frontage. The specification for this space has been discussed with both Kent Highways and Maidstone Borough Council. The officer's report is a robust and thorough assessment of the application, and we commend the officer's recommendation to you. And that was from Mr. Reedman for the applicant. And I return to Councillor Pearl for his own statement as a visiting member, which will cover both this and the listed building consent. Councillor Pearl.
Thank you, Chairman. This is one of those applications where I'm not sort of trying to say no, never, but it could be better, especially for my existing residents, as you've already heard. It's obviously always sensible to convert an empty building rather than decimating, open space. And as Mr. Timms has shown, this proposal is broadly restorative. And for once, it actually looks fairly nice. And I'm really grateful to Mr. Timms and to DHA for the extra work they've done in providing the new waiting area for what's basically our sort of school bus stop out the front of the site. Where I'm concerned is firstly in the particular issue of privacy and the peaceable enjoyment for my neighbouring residents. The London Road Character Area Assessment describes Summerfield Lane, for example, as, quote, an unexpected backwater, unquote. And I'd say privacy is sort of a real premium point here. Maintaining this is a key requirement of our policy DM9, and I'd suggest that not enough has been done here yet. Secondly, though, there's the proposed housing mix. Whilst Mr. Reedman referred to housing need, this council's strategic housing market assessment tells us that no more than 5% of dwellings should be one-bed units. Yet here we seem to have around half. The result is that by increasing the overall number of units, it pushes the density to more than twice the level stipulated in policy DM12, which is currently 35 dwellings per hectare for a site like this. It also turns us from having ample parking to having too little, with the excess to be pushed onto neighbouring residential streets, I fear. And to be clear, this should be a suburban site for the parking standards in DM23 and not edge of centre as stated. Moreover, it sort of changes the nature of the neighbourhood. If you want to understand this part of my ward, some people, dare I say, refer to this as the nice side of the road. It sits between Queen's Road and Bowermount Road, if that means anything to you. Spacious family housing. And where we've got exceptions like Queen's Gate close by, these are all, these are at least all sort of 2 or 3 bed flats and houses. With so many one beds, this application would be rather less family orientated and suffer the sorts of high turnovers typically associated with buy-to-lets. It's really not in keeping. The mix belongs more in, say, St. Peter's Street rather than here. So while I'm not sort of asking you to sort of save our empty building or anything daft like that, I would really ask you to condition out what you can here, and moreover, perhaps ask the applicants to go away and please rethink these issues of mix and density here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, I don't see any... yes, I see Councillor Harwood has indicated, followed by Councillor Mumford. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I agree with an awful lot of what the ward councillor and neighbouring residents have said on this in terms of the intensity of the proposal. I understand that Mr. Timms and I think in terms of design, quality and materials, I think that's about right. I suggest that this elements of this are extension, elements of it are new build that are built to last, and we should be negotiating and ensuring that we have renewable energy generation in there for a start. There is some kind of reference in the papers and in the application to building in niches for wildlife and so on, but no detail there. So we'll need all of that through condition. But I think probably my key concern relates to the relationship with Summerfield Lane, which has been pointed out is a remarkably leafy backwater, if you like, for somewhere so close to the town centre. And I think it's up there with the Blythe roads and so on as being, really worthy of retention and protection. And I think there was a very similar example of the change of an institutional building and site in my own ward, in North Ward, where it backs onto Heathfield Road, when the St Francis school site was redeveloped for a new housing estate. And we did manage to overcome some of those impacts through a really careful and considered approach to the landscaping. And I think the way you can achieve that here is, if anyone knows the Summerfield Hospital site, in the kind of southwest corner to the rear of the hospital, there's effectively a woodland in the corner, and it's on, if you like, the armpit of Summerfield Lane, on the inside of the bend in Summerfield Lane. And my concern is that if that area of really very dense, well, effectively woodland, is hollowed out, it will totally open up people's back the gardens and so on in Summerfield Lane, but also Summerfield Close, which is immediately adjacent as well. So, as I say, the conceit we used in the St Francis school site was essentially, right at the beginning, we fenced off the area of woodland that backed onto the residential area, and now we have a new housing on that site, but because that, if you like, that urban woodland block was protected right from the off, you virtually don't know the new development is there when you're in the established community. So I noticed that there is no detailed landscaping. We don't know what the species are. We don't know very much. It's all indicative at this stage. But I suggest that we should condition that southwestern block of tree cover is maintained and fenced so that it doesn't get whittled away, it doesn't get eroded going forward. The type of accommodation that's being proposed, it's not going to be in garden. It'll be contractor managed, and we all know what contractors do. They want the path of least resistance, and they'll whack everything down, so they have to maintain it less often. We can't have that. So that, I suggest the officers need to negotiate in some way. So I think what I'm willing to say is that I'm willing to move that we do grant permission, as long as we get the detail of the landscape, including the fencing off that area, coming back to the ward councillors and to the group spokespersons. And we need detail on where renewable energy generation can go onto the new build and the extension elements. And I think, and then we need the detail of where the kind of niches for wildlife and so on will go, because again, as the ward councillor has stated, we actually get quite an intensification of development on this site, and the rear of it is remarkably still quite green. The landscaping condition will also need to take real notice of that grass fronting London Road, which has got a number of trees on it, to ensure that setting for the very attractive terrace front of the building is safeguarded effectively in perpetuity. And again, the landscape and ecological management plan will need to be absolutely watertight. Otherwise, we could end up with, after 5 years of the replacement on the condition, that we lose the tree cover and we lose what is a very nice frontage on the site.
I mean, you've asked for so much detail there, Tony. Are you happy that we can delegate this in consultation, or do you think?
Well, I think we can do it. I think, to be reasonable, I think as long as we capture what we want, then the applicants need to go away and work it up with the case officer, and then bring it back to the ward councillors and the spokespersons, so that we can say, that's either right or it's wrong. But I don't think we need to defer. I think it would be better to get certainty, but clarity in terms of a good project, and through that reference back, if you like.
Okay, I just need you to be clear. Is council? Are you moving anything at this point?
Yeah, I can move it with those changes.
Is anyone going to second that?
I could possibly second it if I'm next to speak.
You are indeed, Councillor Mumford, followed by Councillor Price.
Well, if I carry on speaking, I mean, I was pleased to hear the developer say they engaged with the council, that they included pre-applications, at which I was at. And
hello?
Family members building back was. Hello, can you hear me?
I can now. You went faint for a second.
I'm sorry. One of the buildings at the back, one of the on the first slide that we were shown, there is one of the buildings is rendered as opposed to brickwork, and I think I pointed this out at pre-application. I'd still like to know why that's going forward as a rendered part of the building. I know last time it was painted white. When I first, that seems to still be rendered. And out of the 70-odd parking places, we have only got 8 with charging points. And it was something that I had pointed out. We're going to get electric scooters. We're going to get electric motorcycles. I'm willing to second this as long as we can condition that these parking places are future-proofed and that conduit is laid to them. So we future-proof the parking bays by putting conduit to them, possibly provide a motorcycle, because I think where it is, that might be a requirement, and we need charging points for them. 8 is not sufficient.
Councillor Harwood, would you take that on board?
I'm very happy to take that on board. I think that was what was missing, and also from the applicant's discussion was the sustainability issue. As I say, we're in a climate emergency, and we need to factor these things in because this building is built to last.
Okay, thank you very much.
So I will second.
Thank you. Councillor Bryce, and I've got a lot of people on this, so please don't repeat yourselves, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I hear what Councillor Pearl is saying about the distribution of units, so that's quite concerning. Affordable housing, can you tell me the level of affordable housing again?
2 units.
Yeah, I don't understand why the estates where in my ward, have to have 40% affordable housing.
It's very simple, Councillor Bryce. Your government introduced something called a vacant buildings credit, which means that if you remove buildings, you don't have to put in much affordable housing because the vacant building credit removes that requirement, which is why there's only 2 units and why, unfortunately, they're not really affordable, because we all know discount housing isn't really market housing isn't really affordable, but no housing association is going to take on 2 units.
But does that apply to the fact it applies to the vacant building, but obviously there's also new building on this site?
No, it applies to the whole site.
Yes, it's something needs looking at, doesn't it? It's disappointing. I'm looking at the plans, and again, I'm sorry I've come to this as a sub, but it does seem like there's a lot of 2-bed apartments on there, but yet we have this high number of studio apartments. I mean, I can see Councillor Powell's point on this. I do think it will, that will change. It will have an impact on the local area. All right, thanks for clarifying that.
No, you're welcome. Councillor Vizard, I think, was next.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Harwood has actually covered the points that I was really concerned with, and that was the fact of providing the bus lay-by. There's a good few very mature trees on the front, and they need to be preserved. And I'm not going to add any more. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kimantz, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to clarify that when we had the pre-app, they were given a list of the cooperative housing that could take on board the 2 houses, and not one of them has been approached. So I'm a little bit peeved that there is 2 units there that could be right for cooperative housing, and they haven't been approached. So, it's not just council housing and stuff, but cooperative housing, is the way forward. As you know, I bang on about it all the time, and we haven't been approached, and we have the money to buy these houses. So, I'm not happy with the way that it's been addressed. So I've said my piece.
Right, I will return to this issue of cooperative housing later, because as a separate issue. But I do take your point. We really need to get a grip on this particular issue. Councillor Perry. Councillor Perry?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah. I will be brief because I think a lot of it's been said, but I do agree with what Councillor Pearl, as the ward member, has said. I'm concerned about the housing mix. I just think there's a huge proportion of 1-bedroom apartments that will have a very high turnover. It does create pressures on the parking, which seems to be totally inadequate as well. And the whole thing, the mix of housing seems to be totally out of kilter with the area. I'm really concerned about it. I'd like to see this whole proposal deferred because there are other issues as well. That this whole design can be re-looked at, because I think at the moment it just doesn't look right. Thank you.
Right, we'll come back to that in a minute. Councillor Powell, please. Councillor Powell.
Yes, I'm here, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, just basically is what Councillor Perry just said. I mean, one of the other points I was going to come, we talk about the electrical charging points, and I think that the government requirement at the moment is 10%, so 10% would be 7 to 8. But since that was actually put in statute, I think we've been told by the current government that they all new vehicles were to be of an electric kind of nature within the next 20 years. Now, given that this site might not be finished for 2 or 3 years, that would only leave 17 years. So I think we should all, I mean, I don't know whether we can actually press for 20 kind of electric kind of points, given that most people that have 1-bedroom flats do tend to have cars as well. There might be exceptions. I would imagine that every single property here would probably have a car, which creates its own issue. But I think we should certainly push this electric charging point, not only with this application, but all future applications, Mr. Chairman. That's just my thoughts.
No, I think you're probably quite right. Councillor Atkinson.
Yeah, thank you. To talk about Councillor Powell's last point, it's actually 2030 when petrol and diesel cars will no longer be sold. That's the current aim anyway, so Councillor Powell is right. We do need to have much better electric vehicle charging points. So that's one thing I would say. I mean, quite honestly, in every new development like this, we should be having 100% electric vehicle charging points, in my view. So that's one point. I see there's a mention in para 616 of Juliet balconies, which, I mean, I don't think these are suitable for this building. I don't think they're suitable for any building, quite frankly. So I don't really think we should be encouraging Juliet balconies, and it's actually included in condition 20, condition 20D. So I really don't think we should be having those. Right, going on to condition 8. Despite what we were saying in the intermission, I still think we shouldn't have any sycamores planted, and there shouldn't be any plastic guards for any new planting of trees and hedges. Condition 24B, as written, doesn't actually make any sense. I think the word should in the first line should be deleted, and then it would actually make sense. So I think that's all I've got to say for now. So thank you very much.
Councillor Brindle.
Thank you. Sorry, I was doing the usual Olympic sport here.
It's catching on.
I'm sure it is. If they could do breakdancing, I'm sure they can do mouse training. I'm glad to see that following the pre-app meeting we all had that they're going to reinstate the porches, but I still have major concern, as others do, with the high mix or the high mix of, or the wrong mix of the dwellings, and the lack of parking. I couldn't agree more. There's not enough parking. It will become very untidy looking if cars are just parked willy-nilly all over the site because they can't find a spot. Thank you.
Thank you. I was actually the cabinet member when the aforementioned supplementary planning guidance for the area was adopted. So, and I know the area quite well. This is not a perfect application, but it is quite a good application. There are things that have been mentioned that could be improved, and a couple of additional points that we might want to pursue. The fact is, I don't like the housing mix either, but it is actually difficult to to actually say that it has a significant effect on the design, because of the nature of the design is effectively controlled and shaped by the existing building which is being converted, and the need to mirror that in the new build. So I think it would look fairly similar in terms of the streetscape, whatever size the units were. So the impact is indirect rather than in the same design sense as it would be if you had lots of very small houses. It is difficult to argue that the distance between two neighbouring properties is really within the historic measures that we use to actually say that there were any impacts on neighbouring properties. What Councillor Harwood is of course quite right that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try and improve the application and ensure that there is more than adequate good landscaping to make sure that we mitigate any effect of that. I was concerned originally about the bus stop issue. The applicant has addressed that. So I think on balance, and well, more than on balance, this application has more in favour of it than against it. I would say that, like Councillor Kimmans, I think that in future we should be more alive to the potential of cooperative housing for very small numbers of, shall we say, affordable housing, because vacant building credits are going to be used more and more. So we are going to be in this situation more than we would like. So I think we do need to actually address that and draw it to the attention of developers who probably did not think about that to any great extent. It's the question I would ask is there any, I know we're likely to there's a recommendation on the table, but is there any scope for a delegated option to try and increase the number of charging points? I just ask officers that.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It is a discussion I had with the applicant because I thought it might be raised. There's definitely scope. I'll just quickly share the screen just so you can see where I'm referring to. I mean, it's so you've got the charging points. Sorry, bear with me. Right, okay, you've got some charging points at the back here. You just see those dark black. Yeah. You can fill that in. The applicant's willing to fill that in so that they're ready charging. So there's an additional 3 there. I think what we could look at, I don't really want to say, they could all be provided as ready to go passive, because there's a lot of level changes quite significant from there, but we can certainly look at what is reasonable to provide the passive charging so it's ready, as Councillor Mumford said. I think that would be sensible rather than saying every charging point. And if I may, just on a couple of the points raised in terms of PV, if you can again see on here, it would be on the top of the rear wings, the listed building where this sort of yellow box is, and on the roof of the new build. It is within condition 15 to provide those details, so it is secured. Condition 8 is the sort of wildlife friendly niches that's sort of listed as to what exactly they need to provide, and I think the comments sort of about the trees in the southwest corner, some of them are protected, but I think, and the comments at the front, I think what we need to do, we've got a sort of standard landscape condition, but put that maybe into a more robust LEMP, potentially with some more planting in this area to strengthen it. So I think that can be done. And then I just think lastly on the parking, there is an option which I didn't pursue, the frontage here. That's obviously hard surfaced. It's very important, the frontage there, and there is proposed bollards, removable bollards, to prevent parking in there. That's the route we've gone, but there is an option to provide sort of 8 visitor parking bays in the front there, should members feel that a bit more parking is important, such that they're happy for cars to be parked there. Obviously, it's cars, you will see them, but they're not permanent buildings, so there is that option. Thank you.
Okay, I personally am open-minded about that. What do the movers of the motion think?
Right, thank you, Chairman. In terms of the additional parking, I totally understand what the ward councillor has said about the type of tenure and the type of units, and it can be done. I mean, for example, anyone who knows police headquarters in Sutton Road, prior to their having security concerns, they used to have an element of parking in front of the main building, and it used to work. And so I think it's designed well. I think it can work, and I think the solution being, if that's for the visitor parking, it can work appropriately. But the thing is, that's intimately linked to the landscape and ecological management plan, making sure that the landscaping along the frontage is retained forever, effectively. And so yes, I'm willing to remove the bollards because there isn't a security issue here, and well planned 8 parking bays for visitors I think will work. So yeah, happy with that. Still a bit concerned about the lack of detail on the solar PV and the niches for wildlife. We will need some detail on that, on how many and where. And on the LEMP issue, what we're seeing increasingly is that we have this 5 years replacement clause in the condition, and we're effectively losing everything after 5 years because the protection comes out. It's really important we don't do that. So I think that LEMP needs to really focus on the site frontage, on maintaining good tree cover there, and on that woodland block in the southwest corner. I think we need to ensure through the LEMP it's fenced, so it's not able to be messed about or reduced. And I absolutely agree with Mr. Timms in that we can bolster it, and we can then shelter Summerfield Lane even more by extending that woodland area. And I think we should consider, it would probably be separate to here, and probably the ward councillors want to do it, whether the new planting should be TPO'd as well, to ensure that we've got that screen absolutely tied up.
Okay, thank you. Is that clear to the officers what Councillor Harwood and Councillor Mumford are suggesting?
Yes, Chair.
Clive, can I come in?
Yes, of course.
And so on the charging points, we accept the extra 3 at the back, taking us up to 11. Mm-hmm. And we go for 50% of the remainder to be future-proofed, i.e. conduit put in so they can be future-proofed.
At the very least, if Richard can get a couple more now, I won't object.
So he's got the 3 at the back.
Yeah, I mean in addition to that, but, try for that and then, future-proof at a minimum.
Minimum of 50%.
Yeah. Okay. Mr. Timms, are you clear on everything that's being asked for?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, are the other officers clear? And members come to that? Okay.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, I've asked to speak a number of times now.
Sorry, Mr. Jarman, for some reason it hasn't come through on the IM. I do apologise.
3 times.
There must be an IT issue. Mr. Jarman, please come in.
Yeah, just in terms of the basics, yeah, this is a listed building. It's a very important listed building in the street scene here. I think mansard roofs are clearly out of context. However, they are replacing unfortunate additions to the listed building. Well, however, just in terms of fundamental architectural basics, the mansard roofs need to have either natural or composite slate dust as a material, not plastic coated aluminium.
Okay, thank you. Right, Mr. Timms, do we need to amend the condition to specify that? I think we probably do.
Yes, yeah, that's fine, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jarman. For some reason, I don't know why it didn't come through on the IM. I do apologise.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Clements, yeah.
Lottie Parfitt-Reid asked to speak, and so did I. So I'd let her go first.
Right. For some reason, we're having trouble with the IM here. Councillor Parfitt-Reid, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Unfortunately, I think the debate has moved on somewhat since I actually indicated to speak. I mean, it's what my point that I wanted to make was around the mix. I think the mix isn't right. I think there's far too many one-bedroom flats. I mean, I appreciate everything that's been said around the renewables and the landscaping, and I agree with all of that. But I just do feel that we're sort of trying to ice the cake before we've even baked the sponge. And are we actually saying that we're accepting this mix of 50% of one-bedroom flats?
I think the problem is that really, in practical terms, it would be quite difficult to argue that it has an effect on the character of the area, because in a built design or architectural sense, at least, which is really what the planning process is largely concerned about. And I think to an extent we are addressing that concern by providing the additional car parking, but.
Well, I mean, I have no problem with the architecture at all. In fact, I think it's actually very sympathetically done, and it's actually very pleasing aesthetically to my mind. But if we've done a housing assessment needs and we're saying we need 5% one-bedroom flats, why are we now letting something go through with 50% one-bedroom flats? What is the point in us doing these appraisals if we pay no attention to them?
I think what we need to ask is whether or not we need to actually adjust the policy to actually say that, because what the SMAR says is not directly transferable. But anyway, would the officer like to comment on that at all, rather than me do it?
Yeah, I just think briefly. Yeah. I mean, obviously, SMAR shows the sort of the need across the borough. So, that doesn't necessarily translate into every scheme has those proportions, and nor, do I think we can dictate that that's the case. But I think here, I hear a lot of what's been said on the mix, and obviously that's in the objections. The thing is I think, as you say, Chair, you have to translate that into the harm, whether that's too many properties, not enough parking, often with a high density, if there was a scheme that we felt was unacceptable, we'd be able to identify it's too many because it overlooks these properties, there's no green space, there's not enough parking, and that leads to, it's what it leads to, rather than just saying there's a lot of one-bed properties.
Yeah, I think that was... Okay, Councillor Parfitt-Reid.
Yeah, I'll just come back with it. It just seems such a disparity. I mean, of course, we can't tailor each development to exactly that, but it just does seem 5% to 50% just does seem quite a large chunk to me. But I'll leave it there. I think
we might need to look at making our SMAR and our local housing needs assessment more broken down into particular local areas than we have done in the past, and that would address a lot of these issues. Councillor Kimantz, do you get the last word?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, it was just to thank you for what you said about co-op housing, and also what you got to remember is there's 5 co-op housing schemes in Maidstone, and the youngest one is over 20 years old. So, majority of them have got like 25-year mortgages. So they are looking to expand. And this is an opportune place where there's only 2 properties that are up for grabs. And with 5 co-ops, they're looking to expand, because you can't make a profit because you are a co-op housing. So, you're not there to make money. You're there to build your co-op. So, I am so surprised that this developer, even at the pre-app, I actually spoke to them and said, this would be an opportunity for co-op housing to expand their...
Yeah,
it wasn't taken up. So
I think we need to actually make it. Yeah, sorry. I think we need to make that clearer. So I'd like to arrange. I would like to try and arrange some of the political group spokespersons and yourself to have a meeting with officers as to how we can, address this issue in general outside of this application.
Obviously, Mr. Chairman, I live in a co-op, and our co-op now has come to the point where we're at the end of our mortgage, and Maidstone Borough Council were the people that helped us along with other bodies, and we had grants from the government. And if we don't reproduce and make our co-op bigger, we have to pay our grants back. So
okay.
We want to make ourselves bigger, and when people are doing housing developments like this and not allowing us to buy up the housing, then that's not right.
Okay, well, we will come back to this issue because it is very important. But on this application, I see Councillor Perry. I think Councillor Perry has just indicated, as you hadn't had very much to say in the earlier comment when you spoke, John, I'll let you come back.
I mean, this is my fourth attempt on the IM and trying to get in, so that's why.
I can only see your original and this one. So.
Okay. No, I won't hold things up too much, but I totally support what Councillor Parfitt-Reid has just said, so I won't repeat it all because I totally agree. There's a lot of concerns about this mix, and I get your point, what you're trying to say, but can't we defer this to try and sort this out? Because it seems to me totally wrong in what we're possibly going to try to agree tonight. It's not right.
I'm not sure it would it'd probably effectively be a new application. You'd have to refuse it, probably. Mr. Timms?
Yeah, I think you're probably right, Chair. The changes, obviously, the changes have been carefully thought through in the listed building. I think it is a lot of work. But yeah, I think you're probably right. It's having to make a decision, and as I say, I understand what's being said, but you need. If you go down that route, you've got to translate that into harm, or if you defer, what is the problem as a result of those one units? Is it because you think there's not enough space? It can't just stop as there's too many one-bed units. What's the consequence of that?
Well, there was a consequence, but we've more or less addressed that with adding the extra parking. Anyway, I'm going to move to a vote on the motion that's been submitted because nothing new is being added at this point. Do people need the motion read out again?
Yes, please, Clive.
Right, Councillor Harwood or whoever, or Mr. Timms, whoever has taken a note of this in full, please. Tony?
Yeah, perhaps if Mr. Timms comes back, and then if there's anything missed, I think I've got a note of everything and I can chip in.
Right, Richard, please.
Okay. Yeah, not in any particular order. I've got three extra charging points, so that's 11 in total, with 50% passive, ready to go. More specific on the PV. We can adapt the condition. More specific in terms of numbers, locations of the wildlife niches, improvements. A condition to require a LEMP that covers a 10-year period at least, focuses on the frontage and the management of the frontage to retain, and the southwest corner to fence off and bolster that area, and then also the extra 8 visitor parking spaces along the frontage.
Okay, is everyone clear?
Yeah.
In that case,
was there something about the roof?
Yes, there was Mr. Jarman's condition about the roof material.
Different finishing material on the roofs, slate, basically.
Natural slate dust, I think it was.
Yeah.
So it's neither natural slate or slate dust composite.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jarman. An expert from the land of slate. Right, has everyone got everything?
Did Councillor Atkinson have a word to be deleted?
Yes, he wanted a word deleted from.
That's fine. It's we can. He alerted to me that in the week, so that's absolutely fine.
In that case, I'm moving, as previously stated, I'm moving to the vote.
And Chairman, didn't we ask for some of the details to be signed off in consultation with the ward members and the spokespersons?
That was particularly the landscaping issue and the length, yes.
Okay, right, we'll amend that as appropriate. Mr. Timms, you got that?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. In that case, Miss Park, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Looking first to the planning application, Councillor Atkinson.
For.
Councillor Brindle.
For.
I've done it again,
You
sorry.
forgot
Councillor
Mrs. Bryce.
Against.
Councillor English.
For.
Councillor Harwood.
For.
Councillor Kimantz.
Against.
Councillor Mumford.
For.
Councillor Parfitt-Reid.
Against.
Councillor Perry.
Against.
Councillor Powell.
Against.
Councillor Spooner.
For.
Councillor Vizard.
Against.
And Councillor Wilby.
For.
Can I have the figures, please, Mrs. Snook?
So, Chairman, I just double checked that because it was close. I had that 7 in favour and 6 against.
Yes, you're right. It was close. Thank you very much indeed. Right. An application is narrowly approved with the amendments. We move on to the listed building consent.
Chair, just quickly, and just to clarify on this listed building consent, the condition what would change here would be the slate. Obviously, the other conditions aren't relevant to listed building consent, but the change to materials would come in on this one.
Indeed, thank you. Took the words right out of my mouth, but thank you very much indeed. That's very useful. Right, if we can have the vote on this, please, Miss Park.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Atkinson.
For.
Councillor Bryce.
Against.
Councillor Brindle.
For.
Councillor English.
For.
Councillor Harwood.
For.
Councillor Kimantz.
For.
Councillor Mumford.
For.
Councillor Parfitt-Reid. Councillor Parfitt-Reid.
Sorry, I'm having problems with my mic.
Okay.
Against.
Councillor Perry.
Against.
Councillor Powell.
Against.
Councillor Spooner.
For.
Councillor Vizard.
For.
And Councillor Wilby.
For.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Can we have the totals, please, Mrs. Snook?
Thank you, Chairman. That was 9 in favour and 4 against. No abstentions.
Thank you very much. We will, pursuant to the discussion earlier, Mr. Mackey and I have just had an exchange of messages and an attempt. Well, we will set up a meeting with the council's housing team to discuss the issue of making sure cooperative housing is on the list for the relevant processes to be followed, and I hope every.
Mr. Chairman, they are an approved housing. On the list.
Yeah, it's not just that. It's more a matter of it's not a matter of them being on the list. It's a matter of how that's handled. If you see the distinction.
I was going to say it's not being handled very well. I thought so.
Yeah, well, what I do promise you, Councillor, is that we will get to the bottom of this and try and make sure that we do better as a council on this particular issue.
Thank you.
So I'll just flag that up as something that we will be pursuing.
Thank you.
Right. Returning to the agenda, we have item 18, which is will have to be reintroduced very briefly as it is a council site. Well, it's not a council site, but it's a council application. So I would ask the officer to introduce the report on item 18, Maidstone Borough Council car park, corner of Union Street.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully you can hear me. So this application is Maidstone Borough Council car park on Union Street, and it's a Section 73 application to vary one part of Condition 16 of the original permission. So this is the site here, and this is the approved layout, just to get bearings. This is the crossing. Sorry, apologies for stealing a Google Street image. So it's before, obviously, the temporary cycle lane and lights were put in place. And just to show the site location now, residents would walk down Queen Anne Road to the crossing location here. So since the condition was originally put on the permission, the condition was originally required to update the sensor and the control unit prior to occupation of any dwelling. However, since permission was originally granted, it's become apparent that the crossing requires a major overhaul, and these two elements can't just be upgraded. This has resulted in the cost going up above the original estimate of £40,000, and the applicant is proposing to make a payment in lieu to £40,000 to KCC Highways instead of doing the upgrade. KCC Highways has been consulted and they have no objection to this, and they actually consider it be preferable at this time, as it would allow the crossing to come forward at a later date following the conclusion of the active travel improvements and the consultation around those. Whilst waiting for the upgrade to take place, the existing crossing would still remain in place once the cycle lane is removed. So pedestrians will still have a safe means to cross the road and to access the services on the opposite side. No other comments have been received, and the recommendation is for approval with a new legal agreement to secure the payment to KCC Highways and for the original contributions to be carried over to the new planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you, members. This is in my ward. There isn't really much option but to take the £40,000. I have drawn Kent Highways' attention to a number of other possible applications coming forward where additional monies could be sought. So therefore I will move the recommendation on the papers. Is that seconded?
Councillor comments.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak?
Jim, can I just ask, as this is effectively a new application, can we add in about Swift Baton B?
No, this is just on the traffic light condition. It's got nothing to do with anything else.
Well, we put all these conditions on here.
Yes, so, sorry, can I come back in quickly?
Yes.
The officer. Yeah, so the original conditions are carried over from the original planning permission, and they did include ecology improvements. So this application, and that has been discharged already. So
yes,
to go back in when the plan permission's already been granted, it's already been built out, and then ask for new bricks, it's not something they're applying for because they have already built the original planning permission.
Yeah, this application only relates to variation of a condition for the traffic lights. It's a little confusing that the paperwork is there, but so it's understandable. But that it only relates to that.
Okay, fair enough.
Can I move? And if anyone else has any questions or comments to Cheryl, did you wish to say something on this?
If I may, Chairman, just on the point that Councillor Atkinson has raised there, that Mr. Reynolds has come back in on, and you've just spoken on yourself as well. Section 73 does, in fact, if it is approved, grant a brand new planning application. Technically, yes, it is used to amend conditions attached to a previous planning permission, but there has been case law which says if you don't bring through, it's best practice to, but if you don't bring through all those other conditions, technically it's not essential, but it is good practice to do so. So whilst I appreciate that we are just looking at varying the condition in respect of the crossing, all those other application conditions would need to be applied because they still relate to this permission. But as the officer has pointed out, this has already been built out. So if we were looking at an unbuilt scheme, then what Councillor Atkinson had requested would be reasonable to impose. We could do that as an amendment to the condition, but because it is built out, we can't, because that would be unreasonable to tear the properties down and rebuild them with different bricks. Hopefully that's
quite
clear.
Thank you very much. I was not going to go into that level of detail in the circumstances, but thank you for that. Right. Councillor Harwood, did you have a comment?
Well, and funnily enough, I think Ms. Parks has stolen my thunder, because I was going to say about the conditions issue. I mean, I'm a little bit bitter and twisted about this whole application, because the landscaping got electric charging points built all over it, which I wasn't very happy about. So I may be well abstain out of umbrage about this. Thank you.
Well, I can't say I was delighted either, but there you go.
No, especially the way it happened as well. How we found out by seeing there was no landscaping to protect the residents, but rather a couple of charging points and a load of tarmac. Yeah.
Which is something, frankly, we need to go back on, because it's not too late. But and we really should be doing better when it's our own blooming application. Really, never mind. And that's leaving aside the mess that the Keene Street cycleway improvements are, but there we go. We could rant about that all week. Councillor Wilby, did you indicate?
Definitely, yeah.
Councillor Wilby? Oh, I think he's just saying he had to leave the meeting due to work issues. Right, in that case, can we have a vote on the proposal to approve the recommendation, please, Ms. Park?
Thank you, Chairman. Right, and I'll try and get you all in the right order and pick up those people that have now left the meeting. Councillor Atkinson.
4.
Councillor Brindle.
4.
Councillor English.
4.
Councillor Harwood.
4.
Councillor Kimmants.
4.
Councillor Mumford.
4.
Councillor Parfitt-Reid.
4.
Councillor Perry.
4.
Councillor Spooner.
4.
Councillor Vizard.
4. Oh, excuse me.
Okay, I think that's everybody, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, that brings us on to the next planning application, which is Orchard Place, Benover Road, Yalding, item 70.
Sorry, Chairman, it's Debbie here. Just to confirm the voting on that, which was 10 in favour, none against and no abstentions.
Thank you.
Apologies, Chairman, I made that 9.
Oh, and
did you? Oh.
Can we do it?
Sorry, let me count again. Yes, 9. I believe that we don't have Councillor Bryce, Councillor Powell or Councillor Wilby in the meeting.
That's correct.
Oh, so, Chairman.
But if we don't have those 3, someone didn't vote. Was that Councillor Harwood? Did you not vote?
Oh, I did vote, yeah.
Because we should have 13 people.
There's 10 of us still voting.
I counted 10, Chair.
Yeah,
okay, that must be 10.
Apologies.
That must be 10 for it.
Apologies. Okay, that's probably my fault. I probably miscounted. Thank you.
Okay.
Chair, as a point of order, wouldn't you take the vote again?
No. No one, but on my count was 10-3.
Chairman, I've just recounted my marks on my sheet and it's 10. I apologise, I can't count.
Well, you're not a finance officer, fortunately, so we won't hold it against you. We move on to that recommendation is approved. We'll move on to Orchard Place, Benover Road, Yalding. Ask the officer to introduce the report.
I'm very sorry, I can't seem to open the drawings. I'm not quite sure why. So I'm just looking into that.
Chairman, if it's James Bailey here. If the officer can't open her presentation, what I will do is I'll open the presentation for me. The officer can still present, and I'll just go through the photographs if that's okay.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much, Mr. Bailey.
Thank you, Chairman. We'll just give the officer maybe just another couple of few more seconds to sort herself out, but if not, I will get mine ready.
Yeah, it's not coming up, James. It's not giving me the option.
Okay, just bear with me. I'll present my screen. Bear with me, members. I'll just get my screen ready to go.
It's number 56, James. Oh, you've got it. Okay.
Yeah, don't worry.
Okay. All right.
Right.
Thank you. So this application is for a change of use of the land for the siting of 3 caravans and 3 tourers. It's a revised scheme for 2 caravans and tourers, which was granted last year. Now, although an additional caravan is proposed, this application will incorporate an improvement in terms of design, with the proposal using timber as a facing material for the caravans. The landscaping will also help to counter any potential impact on the character of the surrounding area. It's requested that committee give the head of planning delegated authority to compose 2 conditions relating to securing detailed design of the caravans and control this in perpetuity, and secondly to secure the siting of the caravans in perpetuity.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
We have one representation received on this application, which is a statement from Collier Street Parish Council, which I shall read. Dear Committee, we are concerned that the granting of this application would be contrary to the existing policy SB 17. We are told that Maidstone Borough Council have already exceeded their target for such sites up to 2031 and still show an 8-year supply. Thus, we are concerned by NBC comments that there will be a significant shortage of pitches over the next few years and hence appear to be leaning more favourably towards such applications. Currently, there is no proven need and hence such favouring should not be a consideration until the need is confirmed and incorporated in the next adopted plan. Indeed, if there is a shortage of pitches, one may ask why this site still has not been developed despite having had 2 applications approved in the last 6 years. Our other main objections are the impact on the character and appearance of the countryside, and in particular the cumulative effect and dominance of such sites in our parish. We are also of the opinion the application will contravene DM15 of the Maidstone Borough Local Plan. If granted, this would be the 6th pitch to appear in our parish in the last 12 months. As we are a very small parish of just 350 homes, we wish to query whether this is considered fair and reasonable. Further to the above, if granted, would result in a total of 7 pitches along a 200-metre stretch of our main road. If this is not dominance, we would seek your interpretation of exactly what it would be. We have first-hand knowledge of our residents' experiences and the effect it has on their health and well-being. It would also mean an existing resident would be surrounded by multiple pitches. The initial application for 1 pitch was decided away from the road, but the subsequent applications have seen progressive encroachment towards it. This latest application shows 1 pitch being about 5 metres from the road and directly opposite a listed building. The site will be clearly visible both from the road and the adjacent properties to the north and the listed house to the east. There is now very little screening present, and this is contrary to the findings in the delegated report for the last application on this site. Recently, permission was refused for another application in the parish as it could not be proven that the site was to be occupied by travellers. However, we noted in the previous application for this site, the response stated that it was reasonable to assume that the site would be occupied by travellers. As we have concerns that this site may well not be used in that way, we would request that consistency be applied. Permission was first granted for one pitch in 2014. We would like to highlight that the condition was imposed that no further pitches would be allowed on the grounds that this site should have the character and appearance of the countryside safeguarded. This permission lapsed and the subsequent application for two was granted in 2018 with the same condition imposed again. We therefore respectfully ask for clarification of exactly what number would be considered acceptable, as the condition appears to carry little or no weight, and that was from Collier Street Parish Council. Do I have anyone wishing to speak on this application? Seeing Councillor Atkinson and Mum, did you indicate on this application, or was that the previous one?
It's this one.
Councillor Atkinson, then.
Very much, Chair. Paragraph 5.44 on page 120. Highways want bin and cycle storage to be provided along with electric vehicle charging points. Excuse me. I can't see any condition relating to those. Yes, so that's the first point. And then condition 11, the ecological enhancement. I'd like to see at least bug hotels in there. I'm not sure you can incorporate the usual B bricks in those sorts of constructions, but I'll be happy to prove wrong on that. And then the landscape scheme, again, I'd like to exclude.
Sorry, Keith, would you mind speaking to the microphone, because I can't quite catch that.
Oh, sorry, I was looking down at the agenda. Yes, so you've got about paragraph 5.44, I guess, didn't you? Which the highways say paragraph 5.44, bin and cycle storage.
Yeah, I got all of that. It was just the last point.
Right, and then the last point was condition 13. I'd like to again exclude planting of sycamore trees and ensure that no plastic guards are used as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we'll come back to those points in a moment. Councillor Mumford.
Right, my questions are going to be to the officers, because I'm not sure whether we should be approving this. First one is the Environmental Agency's comments, or lack of comments. They said that we should be following standard advice. Should be used in order to ensure that the build footprint within flood zone 2 is not increased. Well, there is already planning permission for 2. We're looking for a third one, so surely we are increasing and going against the standard advice. I would also like to know under environmental health, because it is a flood zone 2, are there any particular requirements of sewage? Because most of them have the old onion tank, and I'm not sure about that. But I would, you're right, Clive, because we can hear you. And I would also like to look at the condition that we're putting in on this gypsy status. And this, if we look at the 5 or 6 requirements of it, it must be enforceable. For it to be enforceable, it must be detectable. So I'm asking what we're putting in place so we do know that they are solely the gypsy and traveller families using it. Because I'm questioning whether that condition is correct in that it's got to be detectable to be enforceable. So I want to know what we're putting in place so we can detect if it's not. And those questions are to the officers.
Right. I'm not sure what you can hear. It's not me, that background noise, Councillor Mumford. Can the officers reply to those points?
I'm Clive. I'm sorry, Chairman. I'm happy to do if I start in reverse order, because I think that's the easiest one, and then the officer can pick up anything that I miss. With regard to condition 5, Councillor Mumford, obviously in terms of detectable, because this is not a retrospective application, it's a speculative application, because we don't know the G&T status, that is the standard condition that we would impose, and because that condition would be there if we went on site and established that they weren't of G&T's nomadic origins, then obviously there would be a breach of that condition, and you would have relevant enforcement powers to secure either a breach of condition enforcement notice, which could secure effectively their removal, or effectively, there are other mechanisms. So to my mind, condition 5 is sound and meets the condition tests. You did also mention, I've missed out those other points that you missed.
It was the standard advice that the Environmental Agency gave us that a build footprint shouldn't be increased in the flood zone 2.
Yeah, in terms of, I think where the officers come from, and she'll come back to us in a minute on this one, you've got a previous scheme for 2 static homes on the site, which is an extant planning permission, which weighs in the balance. And I think in terms of where the officers coming forward on this one, that this doesn't materially increase, because obviously in effect it's all one part of the same planning unit. You're not looking at splitting those individual units into separate pitch areas, so it all becomes effectively one pitch with 3 lots of caravans. And I think that's where the case is coming forward as to the weight that you're attaching to the previous application. I'll let the officer come back on that, but I do remember your final point in the EH officer as well regarding details of how sewage would be dealt with, and that would normally be dealt with through a standardised condition that says details of foul drainage shall be submitted to and approved by the LPA. And I'm just looking down the list to check whether that condition is on this application or not. Maybe if the officer can come back with regard to filling out the rest of your question on terms of the Environment Agency's comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Does that answer all your comments, Councillor?
Not at all. Not at all. I really believe that the standing advice says that we ensure the build footprint within flood zone 2 is not increased, and I still am not happy the explanation given that there is anything in place that would make it detectable other than for our officers to visit it once a year, which I'm sure they're not going to.
Okay,
Sorry, I was just going to answer the councillor's comments in terms of the floodplain. Going on the standard advice, the reason they talk about the footprint is to ensure that if there's a flood, that the water isn't dispersed somewhere else for flooding. And while they'll have like a hard standing that's increased to take an additional caravan, they won't have footings like you would have for a property, which would then cause the water to disperse. So that's the reason for what's been said in the standing advice. There are also a couple of conditions relating to the heights of the caravans to ensure the safety of the occupants.
Yeah, I just don't like putting children in a floodplain, in a caravan.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Harwood, please.
Right, thank you, Chairman. I mean, one of the points I was going to raise was exactly Councillor Mumford's. Having had to respond to quite a few flood events on the Weald where gypsy and traveller sites were involved, they move and they become very dangerous to get in or near. So I do have concerns. I take on board Jocelyn's point around water displacement, but frankly, if we had a house in a garden in a flood zone 2 and we were saying we were going to build another house in the garden, I suggest that we would use the standing advice from the EA to say that it was unacceptable unless there was, it was on stilts, or there was some very significant amelioration and put in. But the other critical point here is we know where it floods. It floods around the pond and into the wood, which is next to it. Also, that pond is rammed with great crested newts, and any development that's within 50 metres, we need to really go the extra mile in terms of ecological mitigation. If you look at that site now, there's a load of hard standing down that woodland edge by the pond, of kind of base core kind of smashed up on the site. And I actually think we've got the whole approach to this topsy-turvy. I think that the area that needs to be defended and protected is the wooden pond, whereas we seem to have all the landscaping buffer just along the actually quite busy road. I think the layout could be better. I have kind of conceptual problems about the principle, but what I have the most problem about is, as you can see, near the pond where you got the parking areas and the temporary building there. I think that we need to landscape the area near the pond, which is the most vulnerable in terms of flooding and the most sensitive in terms of ecology. And I'm quite surprised that the ecological advice didn't flag that point up, because essentially the European protected species that are there use the pond and they use the wood, so they will be precisely in that corner. And on the point that Councillor Atkinson raised, in the wooden building that's going in, yes, you can put back tubes in the eaves and so on, so you can get the ecological issues that the MPPG seeks. But I think the key issue I want to raise is around the site configuration and that area near the pond that I think is the most sensitive, and we need to redesign.
Chairman, could I come in at that point? I think if that's where Councillor Harwood is suggesting, I think that needs a sort of a relook at the scheme. In terms of the additional conditions that the officer has requested, in terms of the sort of relook and discussions with the applicant to see whether they're prepared to accept that. I can see where Councillor Harwood is coming from in terms of the pond areas. You can see I did show you on the Google Earth my suggestion coming forward, plus the issues I'm saying I couldn't see a condition on foul water drainage and how that's been dealt with in terms of the condition. So maybe it might be prudent for members to defer this application. We can come bring it back to you if we can see those changes. I know